Hello.
We're both like,
Hello. It's been, is this the last Thursday of the month? It must be the last
it
Thursday of the month.
is. No, yes.
Yes, right? Or
Yeah,
no,
I think so. I mean, June 1st, I think, is next
it's a
Thursday.
Thursday. Yeah, that's what I
Yes.
thought. So yeah, it's just today's been an interesting day in a good way, but just it's been a day where you know how you plan a day and you kind of set expectations for a day and then things just kind of go and go in a bunch of different directions and
Yes.
you end up someplace that you didn't expect, but not like in a bad way. It's like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting this to happen today, but I'm actually kind of glad that it did. So having a day like that today.
You're having a day like that. Well, I feel like I'm avoiding using the word busy because I have this really negative connotation with that
You're
word.
like the second person to say that to me this month. I don't want to use the word busy. Tell me what your reason. What's your why?
Because to me, busy insinuates like you're just doing a bunch of things, like just you're doing.
Mm,
And I don't know, the connotation is that, I don't know, to me, I think busyness can be a sign of avoiding sometimes what you really should be maybe or need to attend to. Like I feel
okay.
like I'm living. Like I'd much rather just say I'm living. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily live, and there's the living that is kind of maybe not with so many tasks, but then there's the living that does involve tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So I take rest every day. I definitely, I mean, I literally have a time where I lay down every single
Mm-hmm.
day if I am in my home and I work remotely, which is our topic today. Which, welcome. We didn't even welcome people.
We
Welcome,
just went
y'all.
straight in. I know. Hello, y'all. Hello, and welcome to Thursday. We're back again. It's good to see everybody again who's watching this live or watching this later. It's today's topic is going to be an interesting one, especially when we share about. I'm glad you brought up the topic of busyness, and I think it's going to come up again in our conversation. But yes, I'm
Yeah.
Sean, and this is Kenya,
Yeah,
and
go introduce yourself. This is when we're supposed to plug who we are and
we are. I
people
know.
come follow us.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and there was this man on there. He's an academic. He's a professor who's taught at Columbia, at UCLA, a professor of Black Studies, and he was on this podcast, and he was saying, you know, I'm not really good at bigging myself up or hyping myself up. And I realized I wondered, is that something that we do as Black folks? Are we not good at bigging ourselves up if it's not for something wild and crazy? And so I want to be
Mm.
better about that. So yes, my name is Keyshawn Rains. I am the Calm Coach. I am a wellness advocate and a peer support specialist and a podcaster and an author and a parent and a business owner and a sister and a daughter and a lot of things.
See,
And
you be
so
living. You
just
be
apparently that's just
living.
living. Yeah, right.
No, I don't. This is why I love doing this with you, because we have so many similar things. And I don't consider you like, oh, she's just busy. It's just you have a lot of gifts you have, and you're willing to do them and step in them. So
Mhm.
yeah. So Keyshawn she's amazing. So make sure you follow her, guys. If you're
Thank
not
you.
already following both of us, this at Kenya MJ Music and at Keyshawn Rains.
Yes, that's how you find us.
That's how you find us
In
on
the app place.
IG and Facebook and all the places. So
Right.
so yeah, I'm Kenya, and okay, so you did yours so eloquently when you said it. All right, so I am a certified wellness coach. I really now am focusing a lot on astrology and using astrology for guidance and self-care. So I'm doing coaching in that space. I'm also an artist. I'm a singer and a songwriter. I too am a podcaster. I have a podcast, Finding Your Voice After 40, which did really well this first year. I'm totally excited about it. And then I'm an educator. I work at a university where I'm faculty, as well as I do counseling with students. So a lot. And I'm a mom, and got my own business, Finding Your Voice, and all the things.
Yeah.
But I do it all remotely.
I mostly do all of that remotely as well, including the parenting part. It's mostly remote at this point. And so, yeah, I do it all remotely as well. And I think it's I'm glad you mentioned that, and I see, Haley Hurst in the comments says she
That's
said the book.
Keisha. Hi,
Keisha,
Keisha.
hello, that she works remotely as well. It's interesting because when we're going through selecting from this list of topics, this is one that I've looked at and looked past and looked at and looked past a couple of times since we started because I didn't know what approach, I was gonna want to take as far as like my thoughts and insights on this topic. And I know we usually start off with a little bit of a like a highlight or a newsworthy,
Yeah.
piece of information. And one thing I will share is that I saw something, it was on TikTok. It was a TikTok video. It was a little quick, 90-second video. And this person was presenting this perspective about remote work and was saying that in their thoughts or their theory is one of the reasons why some employers have required or are encouraging people to return to the office is because these corporations have entered into these multi-year leases for these buildings that they can't get out of. And so rather than paying rent for a building that's sitting vacant, they're requiring people to return back to work, even though there's no other measurable reason or metric that would make it necessary for them to come back into the office. And I was like,
Yep.
wow.
Yep. That's a really real thing, especially for, I know I'm in Chicago. So Chicago being such a, it's a city, and, real estate is ridiculous. It's insane. And so absolutely they are tied to these leases and they have to pay whether or not people are in them. And
Mm-hmm.
so they are trying to make use of that space. The other thing, the trickle down of that, I think is probably improving now because, we've integrated and kind of gotten into a little bit of a flow. But one of the things that was also happening when you don't have people downtown, then all of those businesses, nearby don't have the foot traffic for the restaurants,
Right.
the foods, getting lunch, shopping, all of that stuff has shifted or will shift as a result of not having bodies there. And
Right.
so there's a lot. I mean, capitalism is scary. Okay.
Yeah.
Scary. And I see Keisha saying here, I'm with the feds and it's coming from the president.
Mm.
Yeah, interesting. Um, but yeah, Keisha, you're saying great stuff. So let's dig in because I'm going to
Heck
show
yeah.
one of this. Performance has increased since working from home. And Keisha works from home. She's working remotely. Keisha is my fellow HU dorm. What was our dorm? Oh my God, this is awful. I should know my dorm. What was it?
You were
Fraser
dorm
Hall.
dorm
Fraser Hall.
mates?
My
Okay.
Fraser girlfriend. Yeah. So we literally,
Oh, that's
yes, have
cool.
known each other since I was 17. So,
Oh,
and because I started college at
that was just
17.
just a little while ago. Just a little while ago. just a couple years ago. That's
um,
cool.
but yes. So, and Daniel said it's time to get, what is that? It's time to get out of them buildings and make it housing.
That's something else that I saw also online this week was this, again, another perspective saying that to these buildings, if I look at downtown LA, I'll use that as an example, or even downtown Long Beach, but more so downtown LA. If if the buildings in downtown LA were primarily erected for the purpose of commerce and business buildings and corporations to occupy them, if the corporations that occupy these buildings have a primarily remote workforce, and the only reason why they're encouraging people to come back to work is because they've signed these long-term leases, where's the way out of that lease for these corporations to make room for those buildings to be utilized for something like affordable housing, especially in a county like Los Angeles, which has an unhoused community, which is like doubling in number by the day. It just seems just good old fashioned greed.
Well,
Is what it seems like.
I was gonna say, there's so much heavy politics behind everything you just said and
Mhm.
why it will never happen.
Right.
But Keisha said, I don't mean to take over. I work for HUD.
Oh, she works for
Yeah.
HUD, so you get it. You understand. Yeah. No, you're not taking over the conversation. Your comments are
This
really
is what we want. We want
appreciated.
you, yes, we want people to chime in. So,
Mhm.
all right. So let's talk about this. This is a topic that Keyshawn chose for this week. We have a running list. I added that some time ago because of what I heard. I was listening to a podcast that I really miss that Brene Brown's not doing her podcast anymore. She had excellent guests on her Dare to Lead. She had 2 podcasts, Unlocking Us and then Dare to Lead.
Yeah.
And I think things got really weird for her on a lot of levels. And when Spotify was going through its kind of weirdness, it was just some stuff that happened and she just decided to release, to let go of doing it. But on her Dare to Lead, she was, she had brought in these 2 experts who were really studying work life after COVID. And what the impact was, and they did a variety of things. And one of the things that they were looking at, they had mentioned that people from diverse, cultures like African American, Latina, so forth, were reporting that they were having greater job satisfaction now that they weren't in the office. And that they're doing, they're more productive. They're doing, now feeling more wanting to stay with the company, but just whereas when they were in the office, there was this toxic environment. There was, micromanaging, hostility, racism, all of these other things that they're mitigating. And so working from remotely could potentially create greater job satisfaction. So when I heard that, I remember jotting down, oh, that would be a good topic. Is remote working actually saving us in these work environments that a lot of us are having to be tethered to? And the fact that I can still kind of focus on my work, but not be in the physical environment of some of the toxicity that exists.
Right.
And I think that back to your point of requiring people to come in, I think absolutely the whole real estate issue is a huge part. I think other thing, and I don't know how conscious or unconscious executives are to this, but not having the ability to control, not having the ability to micromanage, not having the ability to manipulate or oversee in a way that historically and traditionally has been the case. I think that a lot of people don't know what to do. And a lot of lead people or head manager, that is their job, right? Is kind of managing people. So now if people are remote, how do you do that? Now you have to learn a completely new kind of management style, which, so what are your thoughts? And we want to hear from those of you guys who are in the audience. Is remote work saving us as Black women, or is it just isolating us even more, which can cause another thing?
Agreed. I mean, I think you touched on a couple of things which I was thinking about as well. Is like when we think about as Black women, historically, some of the challenges that we've had to overcome in the workplace are, systemic racism and gender bias and limited access to even some of the professional networks. If there's, this leadership group or that group of people go to lunch together all the time, or those people go to the country club on the weekends, or they play golf together, or their kids go to school together. Sometimes in work environments, the Black women that are there, they don't necessarily live in the same neighborhoods as their coworkers. Their kids don't go to the same schools. They don't go to the same churches. So outside of the workspace, they're not really connected in a communal sense. And so there's a sense of isolation that would happen even in office that might still be present out of office, but for a different reason. And so I think that, like you mentioned, one thing that the remote work environment has given to Black women is maybe a little freedom from that toxic work environment. However, they're still on the same teams. They still have the same supervisors. They still report to the same people. And a lot of the same politics are still present. They're just happening via Zoom or via overly aggressive emails or via a bunch of other stuff on Slack and things like that. So some of those toxic habits are still taking place remotely. But the difference is that it's not physically there. Maybe you can walk away from it. You can close your computer. You can step away. I also think that remote work has benefited Black women because it gives us a chance to just kind of break free from traditional office settings, even recognizing that, when I worked in corporate America and I was in an office building in a cubicle, I hate fluorescent lights. Can't stand them. Literally, if I could go to a doctor's office, I'm like, can we please turn
I
those lights off?
know. I know.
We can use fluorescent lights are, I won't go as far as to say they're a trigger, but I do not like them.
I have lamps in my office actually at my campus, and I have a lamp right here. Although it looks a lot brighter, it's just a lamp.
It's just a lamp, right? So
Yeah.
fluorescent overhead lights, the hum of the lights, the recycled air that's coming through the system that's air conditioned where it's always 67 or 87 degrees in the office
Right.
all
It's
the
never
time. It's
72 or
never
73.
72. You gotta smell somebody's perfume or body essence as they go by, and the person who always brings the weird smelling lunch and all the things office environment I could not stand. And so being free from that, I could imagine for folks who just had the chance to step away from their office environment just in the last 2.5 years, giving them a chance to step out of that environment, whether it was toxic or just uncomfortable. I think remote work has also given Black women an opportunity to explore a different work habit. They might
Yeah.
realize, you know what, I'm super productive after 5. I'm actually a night owl. I can get all
Yes.
this shit done between 5 and 12, and I'll see y'all at the meeting at 3, versus like forcing yourself to get out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning and drive in the car for 2 hours to get to work, like all those things. So I feel like the benefits to remote work are almost obvious in a sense. But
Right.
I think when we think about the isolation, the reason why I wanted to insert that question is because the flip side of that is, if you're not in an environment that was necessarily a toxic work environment, maybe you looked forward to going to the office
Mm,
every day. Maybe you had your coworkers that you would key with next to the coffee machine, and maybe you did go out to lunch together, or maybe you did catch a happy hour on Fridays, and now y'all don't even see each other anymore because
yeah.
work was your gathering place.
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes the isolation comes in too when it comes to remote working.
No, I'm so glad you added that because, for the audience, originally I had just put remote work is saving Black women. I had just jotted it down. But Keyshawn, to her point, added, or is it isolating them? So I'm going to put up Keisha's comment. Keisha and I know each other. So Keisha, it's so funny. She said, believe it or not, I'm an introvert. And I know why she's saying that, because Keisha's so bubbly and full of love and girl and sister. And she lived right across from me. So she was always the first person to be like, Kenya. And I'm like, oh my God, Keisha, how can we not love you? Just very love energy. But she said here, believe it or not, Kenya, I'm an introvert, despite my college behavior. I actually prefer to be alone. For me personally, remote work has isolated me more. But she has another follow up. So I'm going to put the follow up, Keisha, so that we can make sure you kind of clarify so the audience knows. Clarification: remote work has isolated me more socially, but I am extremely productive at work. Okay. So I'm curious, Keisha, and then Keyshawn, we got all the key. Kenya, Keyshawn, and Keisha. There we go. I'm curious, Keisha, if you're still there and want to chime in. So, how does that make you feel, kind of having that dichotomy? It's like, okay, I'm more isolated socially, but yet I'm more productive. Like, where does that kind of leave you? I'm just curious if you want to chime in. You don't feel like you have to, but if you want to. Yeah, okay, so I'm a little bit of a weird. I know me, and I'll ask for me personally.
Mhm.
I mean, I love working remotely, and I am an introvert as well, despite I know people see, because I've performed and I'm on videos and,
Mhm.
all the things. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm really introverted. Most artists, most performers are extremely introverted.
Yeah.
You're just getting the extroverted outcome. But
Right.
remember, introvert, extrovert is about how are we energized? Where do we get our
Yeah.
energy from? So I
Right.
absolutely get my energy from being alone. So, the irony for me was that right before COVID, for years I worked as an artist, so I was working from home, anyway, because as
Mhm.
an artist, the stage was my office, for in the
Right.
weekends and the nights, but otherwise I was home, doing rehearsals, practicing, writing, all the things, all that's from home. So I've always had an element of working from home. And so right before, about a year before COVID, is when I went back to the workplace, meaning
Mhm.
at the university. And
Mhm.
I only took the job because I said I have to only work part time. One was because
Yeah.
I'm like, I cannot commute and get here because it's a long commute from where the university is, far from where I am. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I can't do that. I already know that. I know myself. I'm gonna be crazy. I've had to commute before in my life, and that in itself is just that level of toxicity. I don't know how people commute everyday
Mm,
hours to work.
mm,
It really took me. So I only
mhm,
worked part time, but it was funny. Financially, I knew I needed to go full time. But
mm.
because in my head, this was before COVID, I'm like, they're gonna want me on this campus every single day. And I
Yep.
can't do it, one, for the commute, but also because I know me and I don't like to be in offices and daily, and I am definitely that person who can get, I am the 4-hour work week. Like, I am the one that I focus, I can get stuff done. So I don't
Yep.
like being environments where I'm just sitting to wait for the clock. Not that university settings do that. There's a lot of flexibility in it. But anyway, long story short, right before COVID, my director, we were talking about, I said, well, I've got to figure out a way for me to maybe part-time be virtual. She's like, well, if
Mm.
you can come up with a plan, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out for you. And then COVID hit. And I'm like, here's the plan. Here's the plan.
Yeah.
And so I've been working, remotely. I mean, I go on campus maybe once, at the most twice during a week, but usually once during the week. And
Mhm.
some months not at all. It's just, depending on what kind of events we have going on. But for me, I sometimes feel more isolated at work than I
Mm.
do at home, just because I am not the one that likes to go to happy hour after work. I'm
Right.
not the one that wants to go socialize and do all of this. I've never really been that person. And it's funny, I'd be interested, Keisha, in college, I don't know, if I think I presented more introverted, because I wasn't the one going to the club, wasn't the one going to all the things. I've never been of that energy.
Yeah.
I love just kind of stillness kind of spaces, but I love to do things. So
Right.
it's interesting. So yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, I think my experience was a little unique for most who have recently gone into a primarily remote or virtual workspace. I started my company almost 10 years ago. And so when I left my last traditional job, when I was working for Apple, when I was going into work and I had a commute every day, 2 hours in the car, being at work for 8 to 10 hours a day, interacting with, hundreds of people every single day. After that, I was like, I don't want to go anywhere to do work ever again. And so I stepped away from that and I did like a full, 180 and started primarily working remotely if I was doing coaching or consulting or any kind of work that I was doing at the time. And so what was interesting for me in this particular role was watching my friends and community members and family members and other folks who were like, "Oh my God, girl, I don't have to go into the office today. I can do my shit in my pajamas. Oh my God, this is amazing." And about what remote work opportunities did for Black women also was it eliminated some of the geographical barriers to other
Hmm.
job opportunities. Because
Hmm.
I know women who work now for companies that are in a whole nother state.
Yes.
They have employers and coworkers that they've never even met in person before.
Yes.
I have clients that I've never met in person before that are in other parts of the country. And so I think that sometimes if we look at it like prior to COVID, which was a big shift, which for me I have all kind of theories about like how y'all just automatically figure out how to do school remote and work remote because of a pandemic, but then when it was over, y'all don't know how to keep doing that. We just all of a sudden
But
the
that's,
internet stopped working. All of
I
a sudden
mean,
it's not available anymore.
and this is, but we really have to, please, what you're saying is so fundamental, because we're in an era now where, the the blinds are trying to be pulled. We're trying to pull the carpet. We're trying to reveal the illusion, because
Very much
we
so.
live in an extremely delusional and an illusional space. Okay, what you see has nothing to do with the truth. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. And
Yeah,
so this is, COVID to me was the great pull the pants down. Pull the pants
absolutely.
down and show that,
Yeah.
y'all don't have to be doing this. So I am hearing Black women, now I was just watching that on the Griot, Stephanie Perry, who I've mentioned a few times here,
Mm-hmm.
who has a YouTube channel about Black women living abroad, from taking sabbaticals to house sitting. She lives
Mm-hmm.
abroad, and has a whole just massive, over 140, 50,000 subscribers of Black women mostly, who are learning about how can I live abroad? How can I and potentially keep my current job or find
Right.
remote working, but actually finally live the life I desire. And so that's why when I wrote this, I said saving, because I want to encourage, as Black women, I know for myself, I have limited in the past my thinking so horribly based on so many ridiculous conditions, a
Mm-hmm.
conditioning from society, a conditioning from family, a conditioning from community. And I think as Black women, if we can begin to look at where can we find opportunities in these spaces
Right.
that may feel, in some kind of way detrimental to others, is that really our truth? But to be also truthful to yourself. And in fact, if this is isolating for you and it feels off and you are feeling a lower quality of life, start reimagining, what does that look like for you? Does that mean automatically going back to an office, or does that actually mean, do we need to kind of look at life again and better understand how we are creating our lifestyle? How are we creating our own joy? Does work have to be the center of our joy? Like, what, just doing some, there's no right or wrong with this, but being willing to do some review, because I think there's so much opportunity. I mean, some obvious opportunity with remote working, but I think there's a lot of not so obvious opportunity in remote working too.
I think so too. And I think it's also important to note that, and this is something I was talking to a friend about today, because they work remotely and I do as well, but we decided to do like a co-working date. Like they brought their computer and we kind of just worked on our own stuff, but we're still kind of around each
Together,
other at the same
yeah,
time.
yeah.
And it was interesting because we were talking about this. I was like, the thing with remote work that is sometimes overlooked is that it doesn't apply to every single field of employment. Remote work is primarily going to be something that's administrative, something that's technical. There's not necessarily like remote janitors or remote housekeeping services
Right,
or remote
labor jobs,
some
yeah,
types of like labor jobs or like certain types of physicians. Like granted, we were doing
absolutely,
web appointments, but like you can't do a remote dental appointment. You can't
right,
do a remote. So I recognize that depending on what your industry might be, and I recognize that a lot of Black women do work in administrative type jobs, whether it's for the federal government, a private corporation, or you're an entrepreneur. We're kind of like, oh, all I need is my computer and my phone. I can pretty much work from anywhere. There are some jobs that will never be remote,
right,
so that remote opportunity doesn't necessarily present itself. So for those that it does, I think, like you mentioned, that in an in-person setting, there's sometimes like an organic networking opportunity that just kind of happens where you find your kinship, or especially if you're in an environment that's predominantly non-Black, you seek out the one other Black person and be like, are we gonna be friends? Okay, cool, because you're gonna be my friend, because we in this together. If shit goes down, I got your back. But sometimes when you're in a remote setting, you don't
who's
have
got
those
my
organic
bag,
opportunities.
yeah,
And sometimes it can actually hinder your ability to advance in that particular role, because now based solely off your productivity. They don't
yeah,
necessarily need to know a lot about your personality. You ain't coming to the potato sack race at lunchtime. You're not coming to the birthday party. You didn't sign the card. They're just looking at the quality of your work. And so sometimes, that can affect. So there's definitely like Keisha said, there's pros and cons to both. I
right,
think that sometimes remote work can kind of create a little bit of a divide because you're not necessarily connected to the people that you're working with. You're just kind of doing your job, you're clocking in, you're giving your deliverables, and you're getting on the fuck out of there. You know what I mean?
right,
You're logging off the Zoom like, oh, thank God, bye, done for the day. which may be necessary, especially if you notice, like you were saying, if work was kind of the center of your universe, maybe working remotely is giving you a chance to create some balance. But then on the flip side of that, I was just saying this to a friend today. I said the tricky part about it, especially if you're an entrepreneur, is shutting it off,
Well, that's where
stepping
I
away.
wanted us to
You know
get
what
to,
I mean?
is learning how to be an
Blocking out.
effective
Yeah.
remote worker. And I think definitely for entrepreneurs and even for other people who have positions that, work, you easily could keep going and doing,
Yeah.
playing, checking off the lines. And I think that's probably one of the most challenging things. Actually, I think people, because we had worked from home for so long, you realize, oh, I can put this in this time because I can multitask and put this in this
Mhm.
time. And I can put this in this time. And now it's like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Like because so learning how to manage time remotely. And I think
Mhm.
people, the boss or the managers may say, is this person really working? It's like, listen, they're probably doing, because then there's this weird psychology guilt. Is there a
Mm.
scary camera behind me really watching me? Like, is there, I mean, I think that's shifted now because we've had more time with this. And the
Mhm.
reality is like just come out that people are like, listen, I got to go to the grocery store at this time. I got to do this, so there's a lot of psychological things and definitely pros and cons on both. But
Mhm.
you know, I will say though that as Black people, if you have the opportunity to work remote, there is just a lot that you finally could potentially begin to build your lifestyle a little bit differently and
Right.
value yourself and how you flow a little bit differently. But that's not something I think that you can just come up on your own. I mean, I know for me that took years transitioning from, because I was a physical therapist. So when you talk
Mhm.
about people who can't work remotely, physical therapists can't. I mean, at some point there were physical therapy, we're starting to do more telehealth, telemedical stuff where
Mhm.
you're giving like evaluations, things that you can verbally kind of go through. But when
Right.
you're physically manipulating someone or not, but doing therapy or rehabbing or
Mhm.
whatever, you got to be there. So yeah, I worked always, in person. And then when I got into education, it was more flexible in the sense
Right.
that, you kind of have your classes and you can kind of come and go a little bit, but you're still expected to pretty much be there, most days of the week. So when I started, full time being an artist, it was such a weird, I was doing stuff 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 11 at night, then perform, come back home. Then I'd be done with the show, get home at midnight and get on the computer to prepare for the next, get this promo. I mean, it was just dumb. And so
Yeah.
that taught me what the hell. Like I went that, so I learned then that, oh no, you're going to have to literally create, stop. And especially I think as
Yeah.
artists, because really our job, our real like heavy job is at night performing on weekends. Like the time where most
Mhm.
people are resting and retreating is really our time of activation. And
Right.
so your eating schedule, all of that gets really, when you're touring. I mean, touring is ugly. I don't get it twisted. Like when I hear Beyonce and Jill Scott and all these people do, listen, this is why I see people say, well, I met them, but they weren't that friendly. I'm like, do you realize? I mean, it is grueling touring. And the fact that they put on the kind of shows that they put on, they literally, I know, are in complete silence during the day and void of people. Like, because just to get yourself together to get on a stage. So yeah, I got a prelude of that. So now that I've created the boundaries, I'm still, it's just now, and that's because I had my whole constipation stuff that I've told y'all about. The stress was making me constipated. Like, see, I
Mm.
realized I was doing two full-time jobs, running my
Mhm.
business and then, being in education. And so I've really changed a lot of that so that I can't, this is all I can do, and so creating boundaries will also help. Otherwise, you're just going to work remotely and just be sick still because you're
Yeah,
still
and then I think
overworking.
also for some, I mean, for some folks, especially if you're a caretaker or a parent, for some, going to work, that commute in the car was the only
Leave.
time that you got
Yes.
to be away from your kids or your
Yes.
spouse or your mother-in-law or whomever
Yes.
else that you were caring for. So they actually voluntarily were like, I will go back to the office. Yes, I will be there 4 days a week. That's fine. And then you have
Yes.
others who had the complete opposite, experience. I remember when I was working for Apple, when they first introduced this position called, it was like at home care specialist or something. It was basically a, technical support person who was working from home. And this was in like early 2010s. And I remember it being like this innovative
I
idea
know.
where they were like, we're going to close all these call centers and we're going to send these people home with iMac computers and a VPN, and they're just going to do this job from home. And I remember then it being like, okay, we're trying this new thing. We're being so innovative. It was called like telecommuting. And I remember hearing about it then, and it was only happening in tech. Google was
Yeah.
doing it, Apple was
Yeah.
doing it, all these tech companies were doing it because they were like, why do we need you here? We don't need you in this
Right.
building. We don't
Right.
need to oversee you. We don't need to micromanage you. We can send you to trainings and networking opportunities. We'll send you on retreats. We'll put you in leadership training. So you're still going to get all the professional development that you would get even if you were in an office environment, and sometimes more than you would get in an environment because you don't have the distractions. So I feel like for Black women who are working remotely, if you happen to be in a field that remote work is plausible, then like you mentioned, Kenya, give yourself a chance to at least explore it and see, because I know it's not a good fit for some. So I have a good friend
Yeah.
who she had worked independently for years. She was self-employed and she was like, "Girl, after COVID, I want to go back to work. I want to go to the office. I don't want to be in this house anymore." So she has like a hybrid schedule where she goes in a couple of days a week and a couple of days a week she works from home, and she works in the medical field. And so you know what you need, you know what
Right.
balances you best. And
Right.
like Keisha said, if you don't want to socialize with the people from work, you don't have to. I know that some people who work on remote teams, they still do in-person gatherings depending on where they are geographically. Maybe they'll do like a team exercise once a month where they'll go to Top Golf together, or they'll do a such and such, or they go to seminars or workshops or things like that. So I think that what's important to remember, if you're working remotely, whether you're self-employed or you're part of a team or you have an employer, is recognizing if what you're doing is because it's really best for you or if it's because that's all that you were offered. Because
Right.
you might want to explore something totally different. And I know there's some people who, when they have the time away from their jobs during the pandemic, during quarantine, they took a whole U-turn and tried an
Well,
entirely different career.
that's the great resignation. I mean, it really it was a game changer. And I do think that, again, it's kind of half and half. Some people, this has really allowed them a new freedom, a new lease on life, a new direction, all kinds of things. Other people, this has been very frightening and this has really depleted them. And they are, very unsure and still feeling very stagnant as a result
Mhm.
of things. So, you know, that to me is when that is happening, it's because I'm never, y'all are never gonna hear me think that, oh well, it's the job. No, it's the spirit, it's the soul, it's the spirit. And we're always being called, we're always being called to where are we going to, how are we going to resonate with our most abundant life.
Right.
That is what we're always being called to. And so when there is challenge, when there is difficulty, when there is contrast, when there is disappointment, when there's disruption, that is all the call. And I think intellectually know that, but so many of us don't have any idea how to respond to that.
Mm.
So, I mean, and that gets us into a whole nother conversation. But I want to see, let's see, Keisha, you said I travel to DC once every 2 months to check on my staff and work, and that works fine for me. That's beautiful. That is such a massive blessing. I mean, I know this. I have made it clear with my colleagues at the university. I'm like, listen, I do best when my day starts at 10. Okay. And, if there needs to be a meeting or something prior to that, absolutely just let me know. But understand that I do best. And especially when I'm counseling and having to work with people
Mm.
one-on-one, my
Mhm.
energy is just, for me, honestly, I try to relegate most of my one-on-one appointments in the afternoon because my
Afternoon.
energy is just a little bit better. Well, I'm
Yeah.
able to tap in because I'm doing counseling. So, for me to kind of tap in where a person is at in the unspokens,
Mhm.
I'm more lucid. I can tap in a little bit deeper, but I make it, I communicate. And so I encourage people, we have to, and I know some of us are in positions just like, listen, I'm in this environment. I have to just do this until I can not do it.
Yeah.
And, I don't have all the privileges of calling things, but I think a lot of times we have way more power than we even know. We just don't exercise it. We
Mm.
assume that they're going to say no. We've watched somebody else be told something. And so we assume that's our journey too. And that's not, I have really just learned, and again, this does become very spiritual, but I've just learned, sit down, be honest with self, and say and ask for what you need and want. And the
Right.
worst response will be no, and it'll just be where I'm at anyway right now. So why
Right.
not, and so there's so many things. This is why I stay at the university that I'm at, because they so respect us as people. And I've never really had a setting like this where literally everyone is very, very respectful of your time and
Mhm.
your wellness and your mental health, and value that if you are not well, you are not going to get this job done, and we are going to be really messed up because we need you. And so they've created a team of us as educators where really honestly they need us. They need us, because if one of us leaves, it does become, they'll live, they'll survive, but
Right.
it will be challenging. So I just encourage us to yeah, to relook at, how can I better utilize this time? How can I live my life and work? Do I have to be just all about work, or do I have to just be all about feeling in my feelings? How can I, shift? I know that I'm constantly resetting and reevaluating and reviewing what works best for me working remotely. How do I need my day to flow to work remotely so that I feel best?
Yeah, and I think it's important to acknowledge that every remote working opportunity is not the same. There's some
Absolutely not.
where, if you're in a supervisory position where you have a team of people that you have to be responsible for that report to you, you may have more Slacks and more Zooms and more meetings that you have to sit in on versus somebody who maybe isn't in a managerial position who's like, I just have to show up for my one to one and then I can just go do my thing and turn in my deliverables at the end of the week. And I have the privilege of doing that because I know that sometimes when people think remote work, they have like one position in mind and they kind of have one idea of what that person's job or what their day to day or what their week to week looks like. And I know for some, depending on what your role is or where you fall in the hierarchy of your organization, it might have been easier to be like, "Could we just have one meeting? Can we just book a room and I'll just be here for 8 hours and I don't have to see y'all for the rest of the week?" Is that a possibility? Because sometimes it feels like when you're working remotely that you're on call all the time. And it's like,
Yes.
yes, you're working remotely. No, you don't necessarily have to come into the office. No, you don't have to commute. No, you don't have to sit in a cubicle. But if you hear that Slack ping, you better
Right.
respond. You know what I mean? If you hear
No,
that
you're
that
right.
calendar notification, you
You're
better
right.
show up
You
for that
better
Zoom
be,
within
you
5 minutes.
better.
So it almost feels like, again, everyone is, every role is different. It almost feels like for some, at least when they were going into an office every day, they knew when they left that office that they left work there. And that
Yeah.
was it. When I turn
Yeah.
off that light, when I close my office door, when I scan that key card and leave that parking lot, I ain't seeing y'all till tomorrow. And if you email me or text me, my phone is on do not disturb versus working remotely for some because of the managerial opportunity kind of being taken away to micromanage. They're like, oh, well, you didn't respond to the Slack for 30 minutes. Are you sure you were working? So sometimes if you are like Keisha said, if she's a high performer, part of that is because you're constantly checking your emails, even on weekends. And so again,
Mm.
that's kind of my point is that if you're a high performer or a high achiever or you're super ambitious, you're like, I want to make sure I don't miss nothing. You know what I mean? Then you have the other person who's like, I'm going for yoga from 11 to 12.
Okay.
What time is the meeting? 12:30. I'll be there with my yoga mat
There,
on. Okay, click,
Kenya,
Zoom. Do I have to be on
Kenya.
camera? No? Okay,
Yes.
cool. I can stay on mute. Then then you have the person like me who's like, I'm here 5 minutes before the meeting begins and I'm leaving when it ends. Goodbye. You know what I mean? Like it's so you get to know a little bit about yourself. You know what I mean? You get to kind of
Well,
see how you function
that
working
is
remote.
it. Is are you getting to know yourself?
Yeah.
And are you paying attention to that? There's
Yeah.
a lot of underbelly in this. There really is a lot of underbelly because and when the reason why I use the language of saving is
Mm,
that so much of, there's a whole another YouTuber, and I can't think of her name, but she talks about just helping Black women get out of toxic work environments and how that is
mm,
such a major part of our existence
yeah.
is being in toxic environments when it comes to work. And that, yes, so many of us are high achieving, high performing, ambitious, for a myriad of reasons, that some
Right.
are healthy and some are not, that our work life has consumed us and has made our health literal, our physical, women are dying
Yeah.
of premature, illness, or having illnesses, and they're dying prematurely
Mhm.
because of the stress, and the stress gets so embodied in our body that we ignore it, and all of those things. And so
Yeah.
to me, we have to start understanding, that you are in control of your life, and that, it, I know it sometimes feels like there's a peephole that everybody's going to see you if you make this decision, or if you change your mind, or if I don't do this, they might be mad. But we have to, this to me is part of our bigger lesson as women, of really learning how to fulfill our needs, whatever that may be, whether it be
Mhm.
that, remote is not working for me, or remote is working for me, or I see the potential of it, but maybe I need to do something differently. And are you literally working to fulfill your needs, or are you
Mhm.
still working to fulfill another person's, what you perceive as their expectation,
Right.
or what have you? I mean, it's a really dangerous thing to keep running after, these external validations and affirmations. And social media, it just drives me really, really crazy. you know it drives me crazy of how we have to be, I don't know, I don't want to say we have to be careful, but I know that we pay so attention to how this person may appear, or that
Mm.
person may seem like. And so in our own little worlds, it's like we're playing that Rolodex of, but am i
Mhm.
am i good enough, am I good enough? And even if we don't consciously think that,
Right.
I know that for me as a parent, and I watch so many people post, about their kids high achieving and high excelling, and go as far as even posting kids transcripts, like their grades and stuff. And I think it's, I'm all for it when kids, when your kids are making big accomplishments.
Mhm.
Absolutely, yes, proud mama moment, proud papa moment. Do your thing. I'm all about that. I think though we have to, especially our generation as Black women, how much are we balancing that with the joy that we're pouring into our own lives? Like
Mhm.
many kids are excelling amazingly. Like, and I think we absolutely should create space to be able to cheer them on, and all of that. Absolutely. And cheer yourself on, cheer you on. No, you don't have to post that necessarily, right? But I just pray that just as much as we pour into others, whether that be our children, our employers, our family, that we are pouring even more
Mm.
into ourselves. And, it's fine if you're not posting about it, but you're doing it. And it's okay to post about it here or there, so that we recognize, so you deserve kudos too. You deserve that too. So that we begin to really understand it's okay to create the lives we really desire, and not feel that we have to just constantly feed others and feed systems that we've been conditioned to be. And I know a lot of people don't see it like that, but I do. I don't know. I just sometimes worry. And I think maybe because I coach women who are feeling so empty, behind the screen. And I get it. I get it, for real, for real. And don't get it twisted. Just because I'm posting, things, I am an entrepreneur. So there's a certain way that I have to use social media, period. I have to. And then another part of me is energetically, I don't like posting negative things. I'm just not of that energy. So I try very hard to, post things that at some level will inspire, even when major people like Tina Turner died, which I was going to talk about in our hot topics about, Tina Turner passing away. And what that did, that's a whole other thing. But I try to even find light in that, even I don't know how much light, but try to just give people some encouragement. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think it's when I think of the term working mother and what that means. I know there was a time when women were not allowed to work. And the idea of a mother going to work, leaving her children behind, whether it was a daycare center or with a nanny or leaving them at school to go pursue a job, was considered, out of the ordinary. It was considered even inappropriate, in some places, that a woman's place was in the home. And so I know for some women who found the balance by finding a job that would allow them to work, earn a living, and be at home, they added something heavier to their plate than they realized that they were adding, because they thought,
Absolutely.
"Oh, now I can be with my kids and I can earn money and I'm going to have all this freedom, I'm going to have all this time." But in reality, it's just as burdensome as it might have been for you to get up and go to an office every single day. So I think, like
Absolutely.
you said, being willing, I would say, to take time to reassess, to reevaluate, to take inventory of your life as frequently as possible, I think is important, because whether you're recognizing that you're celebrating the accomplishments of your children or your family or your friends or your company more than you're celebrating your own accomplishments, that's something to consider, that's something to look at. And also recognizing that if you're spending more of your time and your energy and your effort celebrating the accomplishments of other people, recognizing the role that you played in supporting
Mm,
them with getting to that place. And maybe that's where you start. Because I know for some women, when it comes to their children, that is their greatest accomplishment.
absolutely.
That is where they
Absolutely.
put most of their time and their energy and their effort and all of themselves into. So when they see their children thrive, they're winning alongside them.
Right.
And it's an opportunity for them to say, okay, and what else can I do? And what else can I do? In addition to being a great parent, what else can I do for myself? Where else can I celebrate me? And giving yourself permission to think outside the box, as cliche as that might sound, but also giving yourself a chance to look back and say, before I became a mom, I wanted to blank. Maybe now I can go pick up whatever that was, give it all the energy, effort, and time that I gave into raising my children, and see what the outcome of that might be. And it might be getting a remote job. It might be starting my own meditation. I don't know. It might be traveling the world and living abroad. It could be anything. So I think as Black women, those of us who chose to be parents, it's important when you get to this stage, which most of us are 40 and up, when you get to this stage and your children are approaching or already in adulthood, this is your time. This is your time. If you were saying, I'll wait till the kids are, they're there. They've arrived. Okay. I don't know how old your kids are, but I'm pretty sure they're there. If they're not there, they're pretty damn close.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing to, like you said, Kenya, to take some time to just look at your life, look at your lifestyle, look at how you're living. And if working remotely is serving you, by all means do that. If it's not, don't do it.
Right. Right. And know that you are worthy of either,
Yeah.
and that you don't have to prove. I
Well,
think that was the word I was trying to find.
there we go.
I feel like I'm watching too many people trying to prove their worth.
Mm.
Prove, um, even and and this is because I work in mental health, guys. So just understand this, because I'm a lot of times we are constantly projecting subconscious things that we're not aware that we're projecting on things. And a lot of that projection for Black people and brown people is our worth, and trying to constantly prove it. in
Right.
some kind of way. So if I work harder this way, then I'll matter. If
Right.
I do this with my child and show this way, then I will be important, or I will be good. I will be right. If I do the and that's where I'm like, we have to, let's do it for the sake of the joy of the accomplishment, and not for I've now proven something, that you're never needing to prove anything. You really aren't. And when it comes to our worth, like we're just not, and I feel as Black people, if we keep holding on to this proof equals worth,
Mhm.
we're never, because the issue is this: in this particular system, in this particular society, you can go do backflips, spin on your head, spin a ball, bake a cake, cartwheel over, and still be like, oh, but you're Black. Like, it's
Mhm.
just, it doesn't, we've had Barack Obama, can there be really more exceptional than him? And it's still like, I don't know if we good enough. You know what I mean? Like, and so
Yeah.
it's that we have to let go. That is a huge trauma. That's a huge traumatic post T that we are still dealing with, having the need to prove ourselves. And this is my son calling me now. But anyway, he can't call me. But but that, I think that was the languages. And so knowing that in your decision to do remote work, or however you decide to work, um, understand it's your choice, and don't feel like you have to be tethered to the idea of proving.
Yeah, and I want
Yeah.
to respond to what Keisha said. Is that she said, I'm my own worst enemy. It's the pressure I place on myself. The way many of us were raised." And you're right. I mean, we've all, maybe we haven't all seen, but the scene in, I think it's Scandal season 1, where Daddy Pope is saying to Olivia Pope, "You have to be twice as good. You have to be twice as smart. You have to be twice as fast because you're Black." So I recognize that, yeah, a lot of us were raised to be high achievers, to be top performers, to be able to prove that we were worthy of being in workspaces, in educational spaces, in social spaces. And it can be difficult to reprogram ourselves to recognize that, yes, we can be top performers and we can be high achievers, but that doesn't determine our worth as a human
Right.
being. It
Right.
doesn't determine
Right.
our worth to exist. And I know that sometimes we were given that perspective because that's the way that they were taught, and that's the way
Right.
that they were taught. So there's some generational components there too. And this is, I would say, that I don't believe that anybody can just flip the switch and just automatically become different. It does take time. And it's important to recognize that if you're pushing yourself to the point of exhaustion because you're trying to prove that you're worthy of a job that you already have, that you've already been hired for, that they're already paying you to do, maybe that's a moment for you to step back and reevaluate, because pushing
Absolutely.
yourself to exhaustion is not going to get you a raise. It's not going to get you promoted. And even if it does, at what cost?
At what cost?
At what cost? Are you compromising your health for the promotion? Because if you are, there's something to look at deeper there.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. And I can't believe it's already been the hour. I want
I
to say
know it
this.
went by fast. This is a
It
good
went by
topic.
really fast.
Yeah.
Keisha is saying, it's a challenge to shed that skin that has thickened.
Over time.
Yes, over
Yeah.
time. And so this is, I'm seeing small corners of Black women starting to talk about this. It's by no means a big statement, and I might have mentioned it here, how this whole idea of Black excellence, how it really making us excellent? You know what I mean? And this, and that's a whole nother topic. Again, yes, we've all been conditioned. We have to work twice as hard to get half as much. That's now though become this weird psychology that further perpetuates another layer of white supremacy, if we really think about
Mm-hmm.
this, because we're now the same way. And this is, I don't know, I might get a little egged for this, but I'm just bear with me. In slavery, you had to work in order to live, right? You were going to get beat. If you did not produce, if your cotton wasn't it was, and weirdly enough, weirdly enough, in this modern day, are we doing the same work to get the kind of pat on the back that good job, here's a plaque.
Mm-hmm.
The plaque is nice. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have high cholesterol. My blood pressure
That
is here.
part,
I
that
don't
part,
sleep no more. I have
yeah.
aches everywhere. I've put on 50 pounds. Was it worth the plaque? Really, was it worth the plaque?
Yeah, it's tough. I posted something on TikTok yesterday that was talking about how, the pandemic kind of changed people. It not exactly this topic, but something similar to how people kind of reevaluated their careers, and some people chose to work remotely, some people chose to walk away from jobs, pursue other opportunities, etc. And someone left a comment, it was a Black woman, left a comment and said, "Oh, if we could all view the world through your privileged rose-colored lenses that says, oh, just walk away from your job or just, work remotely." And I had to pause for a moment, like, you know what, sis, you're right. I am speaking from a place of privilege. I am self-employed. I do run my business remotely. I can make my own schedule. Yes, I can work from anywhere on the planet as long as I got Wi-Fi. And I recognize that there's a privilege that comes with that. And there's some who have highly intense, labor intensive jobs for survival. And I recognize that too. And I that's something I've had to be more aware of and more intentional about. Is I have been given privilege to great education. I have been given privilege to entrepreneurship. It was modeled for me as a child. The idea of building something out of nothing and showing proof of that through the revenue that's generated, etc. So for those who are working yourselves to the bone for the sake of survival, there might be an opportunity to look at your lifestyle and see where you might scale back so that you don't have to work so hard. Where you might scale back in your expenses so that you don't have to kill yourself at work. Because there's got to be an opportunity to create some balance there. Is everybody going to work remotely? No. Is everybody going to be an entrepreneur? No. I
And
recognize
there's
that that's not a reality, but I do agree that nobody, especially Black women today, should still be working themselves to the point of exhaustion or compromising their health just for the sake of survival. Because then what are you even surviving for at that point?
exactly why are you even surviving? I have a lot of comments to what you said, and I agree. Yes, we all have, certain privileges. And even as Black people, those of us who've been able to get our degrees or educated or work in environments that create flexibility and so forth, and still, and therefore, then. We
And
all,
semicolon and
yes, we all are the captains of our own ships.
that's right.
Don't get it twisted.
That's
We
right.
all are the captains of our own ships.
Right.
And I think as Black people, we have to, I talk about this behind doors, but we have to begin to reimagine who we are. We have to, as Black women, we have to reimagine and remember who we are and not fall prey to what so many systems, again, the illusion of who we are, and even in our Black don't crack thing, be careful with that, because you can go around looking Black don't crack
You
and
can
be
look like a whole
inside,
snack and be all cracked on the
be
inside.
all cracked inside. And most are. So,
In your joints, your bones, your back, yes.
Okay.
Your pelvic floor,
And
all the
I'm not
things.
pointing fingers. Let me raise my hand. I come from some Black women that got skin that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the genetics, because nobody believes I'm 50 when I say that. But I also know I was constipated and couldn't walk. Okay. And the reason why is
that part.
the stress had hit me so hard inside. The Black didn't crack, but I had the cracks inside. So we have to understand that we are the captains of our ships, of our worlds. We are. So how we figure out how to move and sail through our life a certain way, ultimately between you and higher source or whatever you regard, that's where your new privileges the privilege that you have breath, like utilize it. Utilize
Mhm.
it. Don't just sit on it and
Yeah,
say, I wish, oh, well, I don't have that. We
right.
just, anyway. All right, we are past our hour. I do want us to be able, you have an event coming up sooner and sooner. So I want us to be able to highlight so people can get more of the goodness that you are sharing and spreading in the world.
Absolutely. So
Yes.
yes, there is an event that's coming up. I know, sooner and sooner. There's an event that I'm a part of called the Business of Wellness Summit for Women. It's a free online conference for women of color, wellness entrepreneurs, and the focus is on teaching you how to be more profitable and how to scale your business if you are in a business of wellness or you're considering going into the business of wellness. And it's myself, and there's 18 other facilitators that are going to be a part of the summit. It starts on June 8th through 11th, and it's totally free. And you can sign up at dawnmrivers.com.
Is that
And
a part of your links? Is it in your links
it's in my
too?
links. Yeah. So
Okay.
if you
Okay.
follow me on Instagram at Keyshawn Rains, if you go to my link in bio, there's a big red button that says Business of Wellness Summit. And you click on that and you can register there, and it's totally free.
I love it. I love it. So I know every week and I think we're going to have a special guest next week that I haven't told you about. So I will tell you about.
Okay. That's fine.
I will tell you about. But yeah, because as I too am putting on a virtual summit. So one of our guest speakers for the summit, Dr. Donna Ivory, who is an OBGYN, we've been emailing. I believe we are confirming for June 1st. Okay. So I just have to do one more thing. So hopefully she will be able to join us for a moment during this to talk to y'all about menopause and perimenopause. Yay. And why you should, come to the summit. Oh my gosh. And so this is a time to come and get your questions ready, but she ain't going to answer all of them because you got to come over to the summit. Okay. There you go. So I do want to encourage people. Yes, please. Where is it at? I think I don't know. I have something in my ticker to be able. I think if you go, I didn't want to do that one, guys. I'm sorry. I don't know where the little thing is. Oh, here it is. This is it, but this discount doesn't work anymore. So let me put another discount. But my main thing that I want you guys, though, to know about this, because I wanted to highlight something about perimenopause. How long do you think perimenopause is?
Peri is what comes before or after? Because I hear peri.
Oh, see, you don't even. Oh, see.
Because in my mind, I hear peri, and I'm like, do they mean pre? Is there such a thing as pre-menopause, menopause, and then peri is what comes after menopause, or peri is
pre?
See, in all these years, I'm like, why don't they just call it pre? Why is it peri?
Well, because it's kind of around. Peri means
around menopause. Okay.
Peri means around.
It's all around it. And then
see, this is why you guys. This is why we need to come to the summit.
Yes.
Because many women don't know. Hold on, let me put this little code because you can get 50% off right now until May 31st if you use this code. So wait a minute, let me see. Show the thing, Kenya. Show it. All right.
Yeah, all these years. Every time I heard
all this time you didn't know.
People say peri who were like around my age, and I'm like, did they mean pre? Are they saying it wrong? Oh, it's peri.
Peri. So this is the deal. Peri, which is before you. So menopause is just one point.
When it pauses.
When it officially pauses.
Okay.
You know how long it takes for it to officially pause?
12 years. I don't know.
12 years?
I don't know.
No, I mean, I'm sorry. Let me put it this way. How long do you need to go without having a period before how long do you have to go
without having a period for it to be officially paused? I guess one cycle, I guess, maybe 2 cycles.
Oh my God, we got to do the summit. This is why I want to do the summit.
See, and I don't know a lot about vaginas. I will say that. I will raise my hand. Oh, I know where they are, and I know generally what they do, but I am definitely not an expert.
This is how women get pregnant. They only need to miss one cycle. Okay, during perimenopause. It takes 12 consistent months, so 1 year of not having a period before you are technically, physiologically considered in menopause.
Okay.
Not 4 skipped, not 10 skipped, not 11 skipped periods. A full year. And if you go 6 months and then the period comes back, you got to start all over again, counting that cycle. So you can't, in 6, let's say you go 6 months without a period, you get a period and you're like, okay, then it doesn't come back the next month. You're like, okay, well, I'll just continue on. No, you got to start back to month 1.
Interesting. So it can take a while to get to that
this
point.
This is
where
my
you have
point.
12 full
Why
months.
perimenopause is so important. Because it can
That's
take
how people have babies at
literally
50.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
It literally can. So come to the summit.
Come to the
because we're
summit.
going
Apparently,
to
I'm also need to be in the front row at the summit with all the notes.
The summit is June 24th. All
Okay.
right, June 24th. It's all day. Keisha said, Lord, I need to hear that. Yes. All right. It's from 10 a.m. Central Time, so 11 a.m. Eastern, and that would be 8 a.m. Pacific until 4 p.m. It's an all day, 4 p.m. Yep, it's a Saturday, till 4 p.m. Central. If you use this discount code, so if you go to onedaysummit.eventbrite.com, use that code. It's 50. Your ticket will only be $25. Okay, so it's $50 regular. It's $25 until the end of this month. And so these are the kind of things we're going to be talking about. And so Dr. Ivory, I call her Dr. Donna, she's going to come to kind of tell you a little bit more about, because she is a traditionally trained OBGYN, but she also has a certification in integrative holistic wellness. So she really combines holistic treatments with, so if you're wanting to do hormone therapy, she does that. But if you're wanting to take a more holistic approach, she does that. So it's going to be really powerful. You're going to really learn a lot. Oh my gosh. I have a pregnant friend right now because she thought the same thing. Oh, I missed my period 2 months. I thought I was in menopause. No.
I'm thinking, like, if you have irregular period, these are all good questions. The vagina.
Yes.
The vagina seminar is what I'm going to call. That's not what it's called, you guys.
It's called the Healthy Vagina. You're close.
Vagina monologues.
Monologues. Yes, it's close.
It's only $25 right now until Wednesday of next week. So if you use the code, register today. Register and also invite a friend, because I guarantee you probably don't know as much about your vagina as you thought you did.
Yes. And if you are like in your 30s and you're like, oh, I'm not, perimenopause can begin easily in your 30s. It can even begin before that. Yes and yes. You can have menopause at 35. Yes.
Well, there you go. Yes. So invite your mom and your auntie.
Invite your mom. Or you can go as far as all the way up to 58, 60 and still not have menopause.
Yeah.
So there's a big range.
In the tradition in my family, the women in my family pause. They pause late. I'll just put it that way. They pause in the late 50s, early 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is why. So you want to learn. That's just one aspect. We're going to be talking about some other things, but yeah. So that's exciting. So, all right. Well, this has been fun. This was a good topic as usual. So we'll be back again next Thursday. And I don't know what the topic. Dr. Donna will be our guest.
Okay.
But we may have another. Well, maybe we just Q&A on our vaginas.
Hey, bring your vagina questions, y'all. I have at least 12 questions by myself. So I could ask all the questions. I will be the student. Like, what do I need to know? Because I know also at the summit, there's going to be a pleasure specialist.
Yes, we have a certified coach who she's certified in blueprint erotic. Right? The erotic blueprint. And she coaches and does private retreats to help women. And she's based in Mexico. So in Playa del Carmen. So yes. So she's also going to be doing a YouTube live with us. I haven't told you about that either, but that will be June 22nd, right before the actual summit.
Summit happens. Okay.
Yes. So we got some good, and then I'm hoping the physical therapist, we can get her in here too. That's on one of the Thursday lives, so that you guys can get a taste, and then you can say, I'm coming to this, and all the things. So.
I'm excited about the summit. It's the weekend before my birthday, so I can learn all about my vagina before my birthday.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome. Okay. All right, good people. Well, we'll see you guys next week. I'm going to end the broadcast, but we'll be back. You guys take care. Bye.